Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video where we are going to show you how to create some explosion sounds, or at least show the process to how we made them. Mostly what we used here is just some white noise for the most part. You can see that here, for example, if we remove the effects on this specific sound, we're mostly just hearing white noise and some panning. That's what we did for a lot of these sounds, and we added some EQ on some of these sounds as an example, some flanger, some pitch shifting, and we're just going to go through all the layers that we did on this sound specifically. And as you can see, I made about 40 of them, and I just decided to experiment and try playing around with a bunch of different variety. The layers that I used on this specific one here, I used white noise. I believe I used the sound of a rubbing balloon, like a blown up balloon, and I rubbed my hand on it. I used an engine rev, and I believe I used an egg carton as well. So let's go ahead and listen to the sound. So it's a pretty filled out sound, which is pretty nice. I'll show off some of the other ones too, just to show the kind of variety we can get out of an explosion sound effect. This one's a little bit more sci-fi, technological. Same thing with this one. This one had a little bit more of that too. It's a little bit hard to get a very realistic sound effect, and the sci-fi sounds seem to be a lot easier to make, which is actually totally acceptable for most types of video games, especially if you're doing something a little bit more out of this world. I guess if you're doing something that's not too realistic. If you're doing a game like Red Dead Redemption or GTA or Skyrim, then you don't really want one of these explosions, I don't think. I think you want something to actually be recorded from scratch to get those minor details of an explosion sound effect. And actually what I would probably like to use in this, if I were to do it differently, is I would probably use some gunshot sounds. And a lot of these things are just so hard to record realistically. There's a big strategy to a lot of these sound effects that really involve your bass sound, what the different layers that are made up of the explosion, and also the echo and reverb that's tied with that. So we can break it down into 4 different pieces. You can see each of these. This is my bloom, and this is my tail, this is my low end, and this is my attack. So the attack obviously implies the beginning of the sound. You can see that I did like 2 different layers of sounds here. I did this first initial one. Then I have another layer of white noise. The reason I did this is to emulate an echo of an explosion. You can kind of hear there's a little element to it. And then here we have the low end. And as you can hear, I also added some debris in there. Let's see, what was this one? This was the egg carton. So I took an egg carton, just I think it's made of cellophane, I'm pretty sure, and I just crunched it a bunch. If we cut out the effects, this is what it sounds like. It has that kind of like rubbery, kind of like stretchy sound to it, which when you pitch it down, almost sounds like rock. It almost sounds like an earthquake, which is pretty cool. Then we have this low end here, which I'm not going to show you because it's just white noise, but this is what the effects that we used looked like. We just pitched it way, way down, added some EQ and cut out all of the highs and boosted the lows a little bit. And then we added a compressor to it. So beyond that, we also have this egg carton crunch. What we did for this one is we actually used a pitch shifter, shifted it down a couple octaves and a couple semitones. This is something that can be played up by feel. I'll just show you what it sounds like if I were to make it less low-pitched. Sounds good, but it doesn't really give that rocky texture that I was looking for. I was looking for like an exploding like mountain or something like that. It does sound a little bit too processed in my opinion, and it could be a little bit better. So one thing that we actually could do is I could try bypassing this pitch shifter. I'm actually going to lower the media item by hitting Shift 9. So it kind of has the same effect actually. That's not bad. Let's listen to all that together actually. Yeah, it just like stands out too much if you leave it too high pitched. Maybe if we cut out some of the higher frequencies. Oops, it looks like there's some automation on here that I can't High shelf frequency. Let's lower this a little bit. Oh, that's pretty good. That kind of gives the impression that there's like some, have you ever heard that like an airplane from far away and you hear just kind of like a, or maybe thunder from far away? It kind of gives that same impression where there's just like, it's just a bunch of low sounds bouncing off of walls from a far distance. So that's actually kind of cool. It gives almost like a thundery or a thunderous kind of sound to it. But moving on, we actually have the tail sound, which is used with some white noise. And on this one, we actually just used a flanger. This is what it sounds like without the flanger. And a pitch shifter. Sounds pretty cool. There's a lot of artifacts in here. I actually am curious if I were to just lower the pitch of it naturally. Yeah, that doesn't really work. We definitely don't want those kind of artifacts in our sound. That you could hear there's a little bit of a modulation there happening, and I think the pitch shifter did a lot better of a job. Sometimes I like to try out different pitch shifters just to see what works better, what needs more work. Then we have the bloom, which is kind of like the echo. I like to think of the attack of the explosion as the initial impact, and then the bloom is sort of the echo, and then the tail is what happens from the tail and the bloom combined, like the long-term echo, I guess. It has that big, long reverberation because it's an explosion, and it's going to be loud, and it's going to carry a far distance. And the low end is kind of just to add some power to it. This is what it sounds like without the low end. It sounds pretty good, but once we add the low end, you're going to see how much it actually adds. Kind of carries it a longer distance, in my opinion. But going back to the bloom, we can see that we actually used white noise and a car engine. The car engine, I just held a microphone up to a car engine and just revved the engine. You can actually hear exactly what it sounds like right here. Pretty cool. And we did different lengths of this as well. So you can do varying distances of it. To me, this kind of gives that second echo it kind of resembles that anyways. It kind of has like a unfolding of the explosion, if you will. And altogether, it sounds like this. It would probably sound pretty good without the car. But it does kind of give like a nice natural element. When I do a sound like this with a lot of white noise, I make sure to add at least a little bit of a realistic element to it, like a car engine or maybe a gunshot sound. I didn't use a gunshot sound in this one because I wanted to make something that's a little bit more simplistic and easy to understand and easy to follow, and something that you guys can do at home. Then the processing that we added to this, we just did some EQ here, a little bit of distortion just to... I think I just wanted it to be a little bit more gritty and a little bit noisier. So it sounds like when we add the distortion. This is with the pitch shifter on it. Just did a very light pitch shifter. EQ, cut out the high frequencies. Then we added a compressor. Just give it a little bit of power to it. And for the rest of these, I kind of don't want to go over the white noise too much because really all that I did was added flanger, pitch shifter, and EQ accordingly to how I see fit. And each one kind of has its own place. Like attack, I tried to keep it very high pitched, for example. So I really, when I added EQ, I very rarely cut out the higher frequencies. Actually, I did in a few spots, but adding this cutout of the high frequencies was all that I needed. And in fact, if I cut this out, let's actually listen to all that together just to show you guys how it sounds. Not bad. I guess it could go either way. I just like to not have the high frequencies like so piercing, and I like to imagine that the explosion is far away so the higher frequencies wouldn't be as well heard. Usually lower frequencies travel a lot further, so I try to resemble the acoustics of a real explosion from a distance, because if this was right in front of us, then we would be making it a lot differently. So yeah, that's kind of what we're working with here. I guess I'll show this other one over here. Actually, a lot of this uses the same exact effects. I think I just added maybe a little bit more layers to this. Actually, I know what I did to add that kind of sci-fi sound, actually. What I did for the sci-fi sound is I actually consolidated these layers here. And I copied it and put it right here on the same track. So it actually duplicates on itself. So that means that right here, usually a natural flanger effect is created when you have two of the same sound effects playing on top of each other. If I'm to copy and paste this sound here and layer it at the same place, see, it flanges it even more now. Where it just sounds like that without the flange. But actually, I kind of like how the flange sounds. Kind of gives like a nice like sci-fi kind of twist to it. But if you don't want to do the flange like that, you could also just use a flanger right here. And all of these plugins, by the way, are free with Reaper. You don't have to buy any of these plugins that I use. So for the flanger, I just try and play around with it. The rate is going to determine how fast your flanger actually moves. You can hear that there's sort of like a kind of sound, which is a modulation, which represents the sample rate of it moving back and forth really fast. And then the length also determines how long the flange will last. But it's really not too crazy. Another thing that helps is adding the wet mix up. This is a little bit more prevalent when you actually lower the rate. Anyways, thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it helped you. If you're looking to learn more about Reaper, I highly recommend checking out the free course that we have on blipsounds.com. It's a free course where we go over Reaper and also Fmod, which is an integration tool that teaches about how to integrate and program sound design into your video games. And beyond that, we also have a Discord server, which you can check out and join and make sounds and learn from a community of sound designers. So anyways, I will see you guys in the free course. Thanks for watching.